a very eclectic bunch this week to talk about on the TV front. We've got a kids show reboot, a reality type storytelling show, a soapy drama, a werewolf romance, a lot of things going on. Let's talk TV. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to TV News and Reviews for the week. Like I mentioned up at the top, we've got a very eclectic bunch this week. On Peacock, Wolf Like Me, Promised Land over on ABC, a soapy drama. The Gilded Age on HBO Max, another show on that same format called Somebody Somewhere. Fraggle Rock returns to television by way of Apple TV Plus, and then True Story over on Peacock as well, an interview style show with Ed Helms and Randall Park. So a lot of interesting things to talk about this week. But first, of course, we get to the news. Before we even get there, I want to remind you to please consider subscribing down below if you're one of my regular TV news and reviews watchers and you don't yet subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you aboard in that regard. So mostly just renewals and cancellations to talk about. There's one other news item, but mostly it's a lot of renewals in the news this week. So let's get to it. Paramount Plus has renewed 3 of their shows. Mayor of Kingstown for season 2, The Game revival. Now, I think it ran maybe 6 seasons originally, so this is the revival season 2. And then SEAL Team, also for 2 on Paramount Plus, but that ran for 4 years earlier on CBS. So really, this would be season 6 overall for SEAL Team. So all of that being renewed for new seasons. And also, they announced, this isn't really a series renewal, but I figure since we're talking Paramount Plus, they also announced series versions of the 80s films Flashdance and Urban Cowboy, and then also this show called Guru Nation, which is going to be a half-hour docu-style comedy from Mr. Show's Bob Odenkirk and David Cross. So always love those guys, and that should be interesting. They star as rival cult gurus manipulating minds of their followers. So that there's a lot of comedy to mine there, I think, so that should be funny. Yellowstone, no surprise here. Season 5 is coming to Paramount Network. It already has broken so many records for the channel, and really some records just on cable in general. I mean, it's the most watched non-sports program, I believe, of the season. That includes cable, broadcast, anything. I mean, I guess it doesn't include streaming, but yeah, other than like football, Yellowstone is basically, you know, the hottest show on television. The finale drew 10.3 million viewers, which was an all-time high for Paramount Network and the series as a whole. So no surprise there. HBO has a few real solid renewals here. Euphoria for season 3. Now, I have not seen this show. Season 1 premiered about 6 months before I started doing the weekly TV reviews in 2019. So I missed out on it. And then it took almost 2 years to get the new season going because of COVID. And of course, Zendaya has commitments with some other projects like Spider-Man. But season 2 is halfway in and it is just exploding. So listen to these stats. So the second season premiere, which aired about a month ago, has hit 14 million viewers across all platforms, and that's in a month, which is more than double the show's average for season 1, and almost all of the audience watched via something other than just watching it on HBO proper. That accounted for less than 2% of all viewership. So obviously, you know, streaming is the way to go, or maybe on demand. Maybe people are recording it on demand and then watching it later if they subscribe to HBO, or maybe that counts subsequent viewing of when they do reruns. I don't know, but obviously that is more than Yellowstone. So I guess I can't say Yellowstone is the #1 show on TV, but that number I think was only for the first 7 days or something like that. This is for the first month. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. But a lot of people discovering this show that missed out on it a couple of years ago. So I guess I have to catch up with Euphoria. I do love a good Zendaya, of course. Who doesn't? And then also on HBO, Somebody Somewhere has been renewed for season 2. This is a show that we're going to actually review later in this episode. I've watched the first 3 episodes of season 1, and that is ongoing. But obviously, HBO very happy with the results of that so far, so they're already giving it a season 2. It's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and we'll see what I think of it in just a little bit. On Showtime, the L Word Generation Q returning for season 3, and they actually have the only series endings as well that I have to report on. Showtime has canceled American Rust after 1 season. No big loss. I was not a fan. Black Monday, which I've not seen, but that lasted 3 seasons. And then Work in Progress, which I absolutely loved. That was ended after 2 seasons. So all of those were announced like within the last week and a half or so. And then the L Word Generation Q, they announced a few days later, will be the one returning of that whole group. And then Reacher. Well, Amazon Prime just debuted this a few days ago, and it's already heading to a season 2 just days after the season 1 premiere. Now, unlike some Amazon shows that go weekly, they did put the whole season up at once. So obviously, a lot of people were able to binge it all weekend long, and Amazon clearly very happy with the results of that. So I have not seen that yet. It will be on the list for, I guess, next week, because I did fall a little bit behind, just from going on vacation around Christmas, and I just haven't caught back up. But Reacher is definitely on the list. I will be covering that very soon, and a lot of people, obviously excited about that. All right, and then the only other thing I have in the news, other than the renewals and cancellations, is Kristen Wiig's other return to television. Of course, she's on MacGruber right now on Peacock, but previously a longtime SNL player. But Apple TV Plus is where she's headed next, and her and producer Laura Dern, who may act in a supporting role here as well. That has not been determined yet, but she's at least producing Kristen Wiig in this show. It's called Mrs. American Pie. It is set in the early 70s and revolves around Wiig's character and her attempt to secure her seat at America's most exclusive table, the Palm Beach High Society. And she navigates, a lot of questions that we are still asking ourselves today, such as, who gets a seat at the table, how do you get a seat, and what might you sacrifice to get you a seat at that table. And of course, table is a metaphor in this case for many, many things in society. But in this particular example, it's going to be this country club in the 70s. So love Kristen Wiig. I watch anything she's in. I don't love everything. MacGruber is not really one of my favorites. And some of her movies have missed a little bit for me, some of the more independent projects. Some have been great. Skeleton Twins, amazing movie. But some of her indie projects have been, a little bit of a miss for me. But clearly, she's got a lot of star power, and I'm excited to see what she's going to do. She actually had a show in the works for Apple TV Plus that she had to bail on because of her Wonder Woman 1984 commitment, which she was good in that movie, but the movie on the whole, of course, stunk. And Reese Witherspoon was going to be producing whatever show that was, but once Kristen Wiig dropped out, they just canceled the whole thing. So whatever that was going to be, we're never, I think, going to see it. But all right, so let's move right into the reviews. I told you not a ton of news this week, so I think we'll start. I wasn't quite sure where to start this week, to be honest, because there's such a unique sort of list this week of different shows. But I think one that is getting a lot of buzz, and one that I can speak on really with some authoritation, because I watched the whole thing. I binged all of these episodes. There's 6 episodes total of this. It's called Wolf Like Me, and these are pretty brief episodes. They're all less than a half hour, some as low as 22 minutes. So you could watch this whole thing. I think I might have done it all in one night, or maybe it took me 2 nights, but it's a quick watch. About 2.5 hours will get you through the whole thing. And that is how I did it. And this is a romantic drama mostly, but a little bit of comedy thrown in there as well. I think they would probably list it as a dramedy. I'm going to say more drama, but there's certainly some comedic elements to it. Josh Gad stars alongside Isla Fisher here. It takes place in Australia, and Gad is a widower with his 11-year-old daughter, and they meet this gal, Mary, played by Isla Fisher, who has, some isolation issues and doesn't get out much, but when she does, she causes quite the scene, and she may have a bit of a secret. And listen, it's called Wolf Like Me. We don't find out until the very, very end of the first episode. But, I'm going to get a little spoiler because it's the name of the show. She is a werewolf. And so we go through the next series of episodes, in a will they or won't they kind of thing. Does she tell him the truth? What, caused this? They will go through the list of these questions as we go along. I was a little bit disappointed in this. I had sort of expected, I'm not sure, something a little bit more enticing. I like Isla Fisher. In fact, I just reviewed a movie in which she provided a voice, Back to the Outback. It was called, very cute, on Netflix. Josh Gad, I go back and forth with. Sometimes I like him. Sometimes I do not. I think he's pretty good as Olaf. Some of his TV and movie work has been fine. One thing that infuriates me is the constant singing, and he does sing here a couple of times. It's very annoying. He does not do the Josh Gad, like that nasally, it's so irritating. I want to punch him every time. So he doesn't do that. So we like that. But he does still sing. He's got to get it in somewhere. It was fine. It didn't really detract from the story, but it was a little bit irritating just knowing that, he's always got to put the vocals in there. But I don't know. This one, I don't think necessarily needs to be a 6-episode miniseries. I think they could have done fine with a film that is maybe an hour and 55 minutes. I felt like they were stretching a little bit here. You could probably lop 40 minutes off pretty easily and not lose anything. But I will say the last episode is real solid. It comes to a pretty nice conclusion, with a little bit of action even that we really hadn't seen thus far in the rest of the series. So, look, a lot of these shows that I reviewed for you, I only watched the first 2 or 3 episodes because sometimes that's all that's available, but sometimes it would be just very, very time consuming to watch, 6, 8, 10 hours of something before giving it to you. So, but this one was a quick watch. So like I said, I'm able to sort of give it that full on overview grade. Isla Fisher, I like. I think she's pretty good in this. But it's the material. I don't think they made the characters quite compelling enough for my taste. And like I said, I think they could have trimmed a little bit of the fat off of this and either made it a 5-episode miniseries or just gone the feature film route and left it at a cool 150 or 155. So it's a little bit of a positive for me, but not a huge one. I leave Wolf Like Me with a B-. So we're going to move next to ABC. This is the only primetime broadcast show we've got on the slate this week. Promised Land is the name of it, and we focus on Joe Sandoval here, who is played by this wonderful actor from Silver Linings Playbook and many, many other things over the years, John Ortiz. I love whenever he pops up anywhere. He's not really a name that you might know, but you'll probably know his face from something. And he plays the patriarch of 2 blended Latinx families here who run a successful vineyard in California. And he is getting ready to hand that vineyard over to one of his children. And we have a handful of subplots here, one of them involving some undocumented immigrants that work for him. And there's also some crime things going on in the first episode. So this is not too bad. I didn't know quite what to expect. Soapy melodramas can go sort of either way. If they lean into the camp, you can get a good laugh from it or whatever, and sort of enjoyment in the sense that, okay, they know this is sort of corny or whatever. And then there's others that go too far the other way and they take it way too seriously. A good soap is going to always have that balance. We think about the classic nighttime soaps of, Dallas or Dynasty or even Melrose Place. But this one sort of knows it's a little bit cheesy, and I do think leans into it a little bit in that sort of classic, this guy's gonna be a villain, or this woman's gonna be a bitch, whatever, the classic Joan Collins, from Dynasty thing. And I do think this show gets that. I think it's in on that. My biggest issue with it is that I think now look, as this goes along and we get to know the characters a little more, I could feel differently. But there's a lot going on in that first episode. They really want to throw everything at the wall here and see, I guess, which plot points are reverberating with the audience or whatever. But there's a little too much going on for a first episode. I got a little bit lost in who is who and what their relationship is, to the vineyard and this and that. And we spend a little too much time just in this first episode already about the undocumented immigrants. It's a trope that they sort of keep going to in any show these days with a Latin cast, and it's fine. Party of Five sort of built their whole premise around the that conceit with the reboot, which I really enjoyed. But here, I think as we're still getting to know some of these characters, that's a plot line I feel like we maybe make mention of in the first episode, but really bring it up like episode 3 or 4, that okay, like what do we do about this? But they're really diving right in immediately with that, and it seemed a little cheap, I guess. So I didn't love that. But overall, I thought this was okay. I think for a nighttime soap, it gets a lot of things right. I mean, look, in recent years, I always go back to it. Desperate Housewives is sort of the pinnacle for really leaning into the campiness of it. This doesn't quite want to go that far with it, and as such, it does end up as more of a classic Dallas or Dynasty of, let's get to know this rich family and, what their in-laws are doing, what their kids are doing, and whatever, getting in trouble. And I think that might have been the way to go because it was pretty enjoyable to watch. But I do think they had a little too much going on. So I'm going to leave Promised Land with a B-. Up next, let's go over to HBO for the next two. And we're going to talk about The Gilded Age first. This is set in 1880s New York City. And this is an interesting sort of journey because it is rated TV MA, which means it's for mature audiences. But to be honest, other than a rogue curse word here or there, it really is pretty clean for an HBO program. And then I read up a little bit on, and it was originally designed for NBC back in 2019, which makes sense. Downton Abbey had just gone off the air, but people were still very excited about these sort of, older and more classic, big lush mansion type of shows. And for whatever reason, it fell through at NBC and ends up at HBO. But I don't know. I didn't get the sense that it was necessarily that, dirty or whatever. But I think that actually worked in its favor because at this point, shows like that are a dime a dozen, and it is a little nice to see something with a little more restraint, a little more classic sensibilities. And just some of the stars of this. Christine Baranski is, what I call a phone book performer. And I don't think I've ever mentioned that term on my podcast, but it's somebody that I just would listen to reading the phone book. Like, I will watch them in anything. I just love them to pieces. And that's Christine Baranski in this case. I go back to the 90s with her when she was on the Sybil Shepherd TV program, but Good Wife, The Good Fight, whenever she pops up in movies, she's great. So she is one of the stars here, and another HBO favorite, Cynthia Nixon. Miranda from Sex and the City is here as well. They play sisters, so we love that. But really, this is about this niece of theirs, played by Carrie Coon, who is really trying to make her mark with this family because her father, who passed away, unfortunately, left the family nothing. He had all these gambling debts and whatever. So she has nothing. That's what brings her to New York City in the first place. But, of course, as we do now, there's a lot of racial stuff as well because she meets this young woman on the train that helps her out because she lost her train ticket. So this African-American woman, sort of helps her out, and they take her into the family as a thank you, and we'll see where it goes from there. But so The Gilded Age is one of these shows that I am not drawn to. It's something that I'm like, Downton Abbey, I tried twice to watch the first episode, and I just couldn't get into it. The movie was okay. I know they're making another movie soon, or it's already made. It's coming out soon, and I'll probably watch that. But as a show, I just never got into it. I'm pretty specific about my like pre-1900 era stuff. Sometimes I really enjoy it if it's done with a little bit of mirth. Like I love the Dickinson Show, for example, on Apple TV. But for whatever reason, and I'll give you a couple of the reasons, this really, really struck a chord with me. I loved this show. Now, the first episode is more like a movie because it's an hour and 25 minutes or something. And then each subsequent episode is going to be in that 42 to 45-minute range. But I was struck immediately with these characters. Carrie Coon, I'll be honest, I don't really know much from her. I know she was on The Leftovers, but I did not watch that. She was on the third season of Fargo, which I didn't watch that either. I only saw the first two seasons. So, I'm sure I've seen her pop up in things here or there, but I thought she was really compelling. And right from the start, you really do, at least I did, felt for her plight of, okay, coming from this background where you think, your dad dies and you think, oh, well, that's fine. I've still got all this money. I still have a place to live. I still have X, Y, and Z. I can carry on the family legacy. And then you realize, oh, there is no legacy. You're screwed. So it's, especially in this day and age of, a lot of people having financial issues, did actually hit home a little bit with me. And then, of course, she shipped off to Aunt Christine Baranski and Aunt Cynthia Nixon. And I was like, oh, I'm sold on this. I didn't know Cynthia Nixon was in it. I did know about Christine Baranski, but so I was very excited to see them. And just a lot of interplay, some pithy dialogue and some, period-specific clothing and set designs and all of that. It's real good. Now, I will say, too much of a show like this is going to probably bore me. So if this is something that ends up going, 4 or 5 seasons, I'll probably give up on it at some point. But I never thought when I saw the thing come up that, oh, the Gilded Age is new, check it out. I was like, oh, I guess I'm going to have to review this for the show, and I was sort of dreading it, and I really, really enjoyed it, I have to say. So I'm going to leave the Gilded Age with an A-. All right, so up next we have, we'll stick with HBO. I think that makes the most sense since we're already there. Somebody Somewhere is the name of the show, and I mentioned this earlier in the news because it's already been renewed for season 2. Bridget Everett is the star of this, and I was not familiar with it, with her rather, I should say, but she is a stand-up mostly, and this is sort of a little bit of her life story or life journey, or at least harkens back to where she grew up, which is Kansas. And in this particular version of the character, she plays Sam, by the way, but her sister dies, who she was very, very close with, and she has another sister who she does not get along with at all. But she ends up moving back home to her small town, Kansas, villa, and deals with her mom, deals with her other family members that maybe she has a little tension with, gets a job with an old colleague from high school that she barely even remembers, but they were in choir together, and he's quite gay, and so they start going out to, nights on the town and like gay cabaret nights and all of this sort of stuff. And the only other people I really recognize here, Mike Haggerty plays Sam's father, who you might not recognize by name, but he played Mr. Trieger on Friends and many, many other characters that we've seen over the years. This is something I sort of just was like, all right, it's new. I don't know anything about it. I guess I'll give it a chance. And I ended up getting sucked in. I watched all 3 episodes that were available right in a row there. I loved this show. I'm big on, if you watch my TV news and reviews, you'll know this. I am big on stories where we really are learning a lot about a character. We're doing some real good character work. I always say that. A lot of my top 25 of last year had that in common. A lot of them on HBO, actually. It seems to be the place to go for these kind of programs. And this is just fabulous. I love this character. And she's so layered already. At the end of the first episode, I thought to myself, that is one of the best comedy pilots I've seen in a long time. Only Murders in the Building was also great. That had a great comedy pilot, a little bit different. That was certainly more tongue in cheek or whatever. This is more slice of life, but both in the comedy vein for sure. But it's difficult, I think, to give us a completely well-rounded character that we already know by the end of that first episode, and they do that here very, very brilliantly. Did she have anything to do with writing it? I don't think so. But she is one of the producers. And oh, here's no surprise. Mark Duplass and Jay Duplass are executive producers of this. I love these guys. Mark is, a fairly successful actor. He's on The Morning Show, and he's done a lot of movies. But his brother Jay, a little more under the radar and more into the producing element of it. But, they really have a strong eye for this type of show. Real good character work. So I think Bridget Everett gives a great performance, but everybody around her is great too. And yes, it is certainly a very queer-friendly show, which I do like. But I often say on this show, the TV News and Reviews, that not every show has to have a gay character. It's okay, to have a straighty every now and then. But this does not feel forced, and if anything, it is sort of refreshing that it's not, they're gay in New York City, or they're gay in LA, or what. No, they're gay in this small. Now, she's not gay, she's straight. We think. I guess we haven't delved in too much to the love life, but she is straight as far as we know. But her friend group anyway, and they talk about their struggles in Kansas with living that queer life, and just there's so many good things about this show. I could go on, but I'm sure you're going to hear about this show more and more throughout the year. It'll be, I'm sure, on my tops of the year. Since I do like a 20 or 25 every season. This is my first A for the year. I really loved this show. It's called Somebody Somewhere, and it's real good stuff. All right, so up next we're going to go to The Rock. We're going to go back to The Rock, the Fraggle Rock. This time it is on Apple TV Plus. Now, we're transitioning from a couple of HBO shows here, but the original Fraggle Rock was on HBO in the 80s. This new version is on Apple TV. I never really saw the original version. I'll be honest about that. I knew of it for sure, but in the 80s, rich kids had Fraggle Rock, had HBO. I did not, so I never saw any of it when I was little. And then over the years, I've seen clips of it, and I'm a huge Jim Henson fan. So, I do try to at least sample things that he has going on. But I know my buddy Tim, that comes on my show frequently, he is a huge fan of the original Fraggle Rock. We talked briefly the other night about how he had seen the new version, and I really enjoyed it. Now, I always sort of thought Fraggle Rock was, the redheaded stepchild to The Muppet Show or to Sesame Street. And I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's because it was less accessible, so I just thought, oh, well, screw that show, Listen, I was 8 when it came on. It was a normal reaction, I guess. But as I got older, I realized, okay, no, it's just a completely different thing that Henson was doing that just doesn't really have anything to do with the Muppets. So this is actually a straight up continuation. This is not a reboot of sorts. It is, but it is a continuation, not just with a lot of the same characters, but even some of the same voice work, voice actors and puppeteers from the original, which is pretty wild when you think about it. Some of these people are in their 70s, but you've got, a lot of the same people. Not everybody, but I did look up, whether they were, part of the original or not, and many of them are, and I think that's awesome. And I hadn't thought of this, but somebody pointed out to me that why isn't it on Disney Plus, like, all the Muppet stuff? Because Disney only bought the Muppets and its properties. They did not buy Henson Studios. So Sesame Street, which Henson sold years ago, I guess, to Children's Television Workshop, or however that worked out, they own that, which is why, that's not on Disney Plus either. But Fraggles, well, that's still owned by the Jim Henson Company, and so they are able to do with it what they want. They chose Apple TV, and I think that's just great, because honestly, I think on Disney Plus, a lot of that Muppet stuff has been getting lost, in the sauce. Whereas here, I have always said Apple TV Plus is the top streamer for me for kids programming. I think they do a great job with it. Stillwater, Dug in Space, all the Peanuts stuff. And now you can add Fraggle Rock to the list, because this was a heck of a fun episode to watch. I really only watched the first one, and I had seen enough. I was like, that's all I really need to see. I get where this is going. This is a lot of fun. The puppeteering is outstanding. And, for somebody like me who never really saw the original and sort of knew the characters, a little bit by name, but never really was into the lore of it or anything like that, you don't need to be. They catch you up immediately. You know where you are. You're in the rock. And you have, of course, the same groups as always, the groups that, the Fraggles who just want to hang out, whatever, and then you've got the Doozers who are always working and harvesting the radishes and all of that, and so they're sort of, ones that play all the time, ones that work all the time. You get it, pretty early on, even if you've never seen a second of Fraggle Rock or ever even heard of it. I think there's probably, and my buddy Tim will corroborate this, I'm sure, but, there's probably, if you are a big fan of the original, little, nuggets and, little, okay, wink, wink, to the original. But, and I didn't particularly pick up on that, but didn't need to, because I was having a lot of fun with the characters as they were. Now, one thing I didn't realize about Fraggle Rock is it does have a couple of human people as well. I guess the original did too. But it does sort of make sense, because Sesame Street always did, and then even the Muppet Show, they would have the celebrity humans come on. So I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but I just never really thought about it. The human stuff, I'm a little bit more lukewarm on. I would prefer they get back, down to the Fraggle Rock area, but it does help move the story along. And so in that case, all right, I've got to give it to him. And another Henson project, by the way, on Apple TV Plus that I love is The Helpsters. So yeah, Apple TV Plus is great for kids programming. This is another one in the list. I give Back to the Rock an A-. Lots of good stuff there too. All right, so True Story with Ed and Randall is where we will leave things. That's over on Peacock, and this is another one. I actually did end up watching all 6 episodes of this. And this is an anthology. There's no through line. You can pick it up wherever. You can watch whatever. It's essentially just regular everyday people telling some sort of great story from their life to Randall Park from Fresh Off the Boat and Ed Helms from The Office and many other things. And they know nothing of these stories. They're hearing them for the first time, so they get to react and they get to ask questions and stuff in real time with these people. And then all the while, we, the audience, get to see a recreated version of the events with some celebrity people. Not, top A-listers, but people that you've seen in different shows, sort of along the lines, there's a guy from Workaholics was in one, and Fortune Feimster was in one. And so, people that you've seen sort of pop up here and there are portraying the people. And it's, stuff about romance. And one guy, in the first episode, the guy broke into the Super Bowl in the what was that, the 90s, I think he said. And, met Terry Bradshaw and all of this kind of stuff. So, we hear all of these different stories on different topics. And what's interesting is some episodes are like 40 minutes long and contain 2 stories, and then some are like 30 to 35 minutes and contain only 1 story. So I guess sometimes they have enough meat to go for a full half hour for an episode, and then other stories are maybe like more 20-minuters. Look, mileage is going to vary like almost all anthology series from episode to episode, because there is no sort of through line. It all depends on, well, how interesting is the story. I think most of these were pretty interesting. The recreations, some of them were better than others, I suppose. But I think the real selling point here is not actually the recreations. They do liven up the story a little bit, and they, give us something else to look at and stuff. But the real, reason to come back to these episodes is Ed and Randall's interplay with the person telling the story. And I love some of the stories that have twists or are jaw droppers, and you just see their reaction as, I was reacting to it, watching it. Same reaction, that they were having, jaw agape sometimes, or just, oh my gosh, oh, like that sounds horrible, like I was reacting in real time with them. So I like that part of it. I sort of felt like I was kind of in the room hanging, so that was a plus for this. But again, all episodes are not created equal for this, like most anthologies. And I do think a couple of the stories were not necessarily that exciting. There were some that were like crazy and amazing, and some were like, oh, okay, that's cute, that's a nice story, but it's not, is it sort of incredible enough to be told in a national stage? I'm not sure. But I enjoyed watching this 6 episode series. I would like to see more of it. It comes from, is it from Australia? Yes, it's from Australia, called A True Story with Hamish and Andy. Hamish Blake and Andy Lee. I don't know who they are, but they created the whole format of this, and we've just brought it over to America like we do with so many things. But I think it's fun, and I think, look, there's no shortage of people out there with interesting stories to tell, and so I think if they get another few seasons of this, I think that would be fine and a lot of fun to watch. I leave True Story with Ed and Randall with a B. So really all at least acceptable shows this week. Promised Land and Wolf Like Me, they were okay. But, everything is a positive grade. We don't usually get that when we have 6 shows to talk about. So we love that. So next week, actually not even next week, because I'm trying to catch up on my news and reviews. So later, probably this week, I'm going to do a little sort of mini TV news and reviews where I'm just going to talk about these 3 new shows involving murder mysteries that are all sort of in the comedy vein. The After Party on Apple TV+, The Woman, what was it called? The Woman in the Window Across from the Street, or The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window, or something like that, with Kristen Bell on Netflix, and then Murderville on Netflix as well. So I'll do like a mini episode with that, and then next week we'll get into Reacher, and there's one called Suspense or Suspicion or something with Uma Thurman I want to talk about. So always every week there's so many things to discover coming out with all these streaming services and everything. But that will do it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see everybody next time.